welcome to a slightly less professional live stream, number 29. Let me just get the other thing going here. I don't know why it failed the first time around. It looks like it's sort of working now. There we go. Let's pause that, and so we can see the pop out chat there. We're going to be talking tonight. The theme is the Type 2 platform cars. What on earth is a Type 2 platform car? It's the one that's actually of a collection of cars, I should say, based on the old Fiat Type. I don't mean the one that's currently made. I mean the one that was introduced in 1988. And there are, several cars based on that platform. If I just read this as well, so the Tipo itself, that was made from 1988 to 1995, although production for other markets like Brazil and Turkey did continue until 2000. Also the Fiat Tempra, Fiat Coupe, which as a lot of you will know, I drove quite recently, actually this week. The Alfa Romeo 145 and the Alfa Romeo 146. Also the Yugo Sana as well, all based on that platform. Others as well with the 916 Spider and the 916 GTV Alfa Romeos. It's all based on that platform. We just bring the chat up, so we know what we're talking about, which is unusual, really, isn't it? We know what we're talking about. But, usually we don't, do we? We don't know what we're talking about or anything, do we? So just bring it back to where it was. Good evening to Simone from Hooked on Classics. Mighty Cat Mods, good evening. Let's see if we can have a little sip of a drink this evening. That's good. I better not drink too much of that at the moment. It's funny, I've had quite a few of those cars actually on the channel already. I've had the Fiat Tipo itself, although I didn't drive it. The car wasn't roadworthy at the time, so I had one of those. It was a very early one, 89. That was last summer. Alfa Romeo 145, I've had one of those, but not with Richardson from Furious Driving. Drove that in 2019. 916 Spider, I've had one of those in Sensible Secondhand Classics in 2021. And of course the Fiat Coupe itself that I had privilege of driving 2 days ago. That will go up on the channel at some point. Right, do any of you have any questions, or should we keep talking about the Type 2 platform cars? Because there were a lot of them, and they do seem quite different to drive, actually. The Alfa Romeo 145 definitely has very different steering from the Fiat Coupe. I do apologise, the camera lens is a bit funny. It sometimes sort of moves focus, although this is the best camera I have for doing live streams, so prefer just the way that it goes on this channel. So yes, we have 6 people on so far. That's very nice. Welcome to all of you. Simone from Hooked on Classics says, I've never driven a Fiat. Never driven a Fiat? Interesting. I'm trying to think of a make a car I've never driven. I've never driven a Lexus. I've never driven a Subaru. Never of those. I don't know why. I really don't know. A Lancia I have sort of driven because it was badged as a Chrysler in this country. The final Lancia Delta was badged as a Chrysler in this country, and it was sold from 2011 to 2013. And one of the rarest cars on, in terms of numbers actually sold in this country. They didn't sell many. It wasn't the best idea, really. Yeah, so never driven a Subaru, never actually driven a Lexus either. I'd like to, but I haven't had a chance to do any of those yet. Right, anybody else got anything they want to ask? Oh, Rob Hoyle. Good evening, Rob. The last Fiat I drove was an Uno. Wow, that must have been some time ago. Not the most common cars for anymore. There were a lot of them at the time. They were a very successful car. I think, if memory serves me correctly, one out of production. I think it was called the Fiat Melee at the time in 2013, and that was in South America somewhere. But obviously that finished around I think 93, 94 in in this part of the world, because then the Punto came in. Robert Evans says, nor me, although a couple of years ago I was tempted by a T-Post saloon, as they were amazing value at the time. You are absolutely and utterly correct. In late 2019, early 2020, the T-Post saloon was available at £10,000 brand new for the, I think it was called the Easy model. That didn't have anything in it. It was a 95 horsepower fire engine with a manual gearbox, I think no aircon. There was the street model. That's actually a car that I did a walk around on. I think I'm one of the only people in this country to do a video on a T-Post saloon. I'm not really sure if anybody else did one. They were available possibly for a few months, and that was it. It was not the most successful car that Fiat ever brought over here. But yeah, I realised the Seat Toledo that I had at the time was a much better car than the T-Post saloon, and I'm afraid it is. That's just all I can say about it, really. Mighty Cat Mod says, I was once a passenger of Lancia Thesis. That sounds interesting. I think that's one of the last sort of larger Lancias that they actually sold over here. I don't mean here. I mean, I don't mean sold it here at all, but I mean in this part of the world. The only Lancia on sale currently is the Upsilon, which has had an engine change recently, but is based on the old Fiat 500 platform in 2007, which is based on the old Panda platform in 2003. So, yes, probably not much life left in that. Hopefully Lancia actually gets some more models than that. And they're only sold in Italy, not sold anywhere else anymore, Lancias. Christopher Conroy, have you ever driven a Nissan Datsun Sunny, known as a clutch slipper? I have driven a number of Nissan Sunnies, not Datsun Sunnies. I have driven an N13, that's the first one I drove. I have driven a B12 Sunny. I've driven a Y10 Sunny, also known as an N14. There's a bit of ambiguity as to which one of those the estate is. I've done a walk around on a Sunny ZX Coupe, but I haven't driven one of the older ones. Mark from Bad Book says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you, sir. Paulie Galtieri says, quick hello to the gang. Unfortunately, I'm out tonight having a large steak dinner. I had a nice steak for lunch yesterday afternoon. It was very, very nice. Simone from says, I met John from John Cotton Classics. He's hoping he might be able to film both our cars when you're in the area. We have a good location. Well, that's very good, Simone. I definitely do need to arrange that, because I'm looking forward to driving some nice classics down in that area very much. Trebelli says, evening all. The first Fiat I drove was a Strada. The last Fiat I drove was a Stilo. I did drive a Stilo, but unfortunately I can't talk about that on the channel. I do apologise. Some of you will know why that is. Patrick Brooks says, I owned an M-Reg Tempera that we can't talk about. That's a bit of a problem. We can't talk about that. I bought it when it was a year old. And Tempera, that's a very, very, very rare car now. Very, very rare. Simone says, I quite like the Fiat Strada. Yeah, there was a very nice Strada actually at Festival of the Unexceptional last year. That was rather nice. It was a post facelift one. I think there were 3 series of Strada. I think this was one of the later ones. It's in the video somewhere from Festival of the Unexceptional. Mark from Babbitt said, the last Fiat I drove was my brother's first car, 126. Dreadful and interesting. Yes, my grandparents had a 126. I can't remember if it was an air-cooled one or a water-cooled one. I forget. They changed that at some point in production. The sort of person who knows about this more is someone like, I don't know, Mr. Miller from Miller Corner. He probably knows more about that than I do. Richard Hart says Liverpool win the FA Cup. That's interesting, sir. He says hello. Hello, sir. Effa Pheasants says, any truth in the rumour that a Fiat 500 is a Ford car underneath? Well, it's completely true, but it's the other way around. When Fiat came out with the new 500 shape, I still call it the new 500 because there are other 500s from before, in 2007. It's actually a modified Panda platform that came out in 2003, and the Ford Ka Mark II that came out in 2008. And I think the first appearance of that publicly was in the Quantum of Solace film. Not the best film, but it's sort of the new Ford Ka in it. That's the same platform. The engines and everything are the same. The reason why the gear levers on the dash is because it's like a Fiat 500 dash underneath there. There's no Ford engineering in that really at all. It is a Fiat 500. They made it, I think, from 2008 to 15. The styling, though, is pure kind of Ford at the time. I think I don't know what they call it at the time. It used to be New Edge, but it then had a later name for that sort of thing. But yes, you're right. The Mark II Ford car was a 500 underneath. Patrick Brooks says, I owned a 1993 Tempera 1.6 petrol before the unmentionable one. Yes, thank you for not mentioning it, sir. The MH one was much better. As long as it's not better because it's got a forbidden fuel engine, sir, I think we'll be all right. We'll get on just fine. Rob Hoyle says, I prefer the early Strada for any facelifts. The unusual. Yes, a very unusual looking car. Very unusual. I think possibly one of the reasons they facelifted it was sort of because it was just too unusual for most people. Julian Knight says, good evening from Hamburg, everyone. Guten Abend. Mark from Bad Book says his brother's 126 was an 82 on a Y and air-cooled. Yes, it would have been at the time. I think the best model was mid-80s or something like that, and that was a water-cooled one. Simone from Hooked on Classics says, what do you think of the four-door car? I think it's rather odd-looking. I think the one you mean is the Ka Plus. That was introduced, I think, 2016 and isn't actually made anymore. That is based on a Mark 7 Fiesta platform but built in India. I think also it's got more room than a Mark 7 Fiesta. Otherwise, it's quite similar in a way. Never driven one of those. There was an active version that was quite popular with reviewers at the time, but that was discontinued in 2019, I think. A lot of people discontinued their cars of that type about the same year. Vauxhall Viva was one of them, actually, that was discontinued that year. A few others as well. I forget which ones were also discontinued that year, but there were quite a few. Mr. Coleman is here. Good evening, Mr. Coleman. The last Fiat I drove was a 130 Saloon in 2018 that I built to race. Yes, I think it was fire damage or something like that car from memory. So not really able to put back on the road. Yeah, Simone just confirming that the car was a Car Plus. Yes, excellent. Traballi says, is Fiat the car company? Anything to do with the fiat money, which means in Latin, let it be? That's a really, really good question. Fiat does indeed mean may it be so in Latin, but it is just a coincidence that the name of the company, which is something like Turin Motor Works or something like that. His initials, F-I-A-T, is the initials of the company, and that's just an abbreviation. But obviously, it wouldn't harm that in Latin that meant sort of let it be or may it be so or something. Right. Simone from Clinton Class is hello to Mr. Coleman. Yes, indeed. Travelly says hello to Mr. Coleman. I don't think I've ever called him the Colster. I'm not sure what Mr. Coleman thinks of that nickname, but we'll find out, I'm sure. Rob Hoyle says, I heard on the top of the range 126 had a suspension. I'm not okay. After being in the back of my father's friend's one, I don't believe it. I don't remember going in the back of my grandparents' 126. I'm not sure they had it very long. Not very spacious, I think. Um, Finley Prince says, sorry, I'm late, no problem. Um, Simone says, how about Mr. Mustard, the nickname for Mr. Coleman? Oh my gosh. This is getting a bit funny now. Mr. Coleman says, hello, Simone, hello, the Trabster. Yes, very good. Mark from Bad Books says, the Y-Reg 126 had leaf springs with little effect. Yes. One of these cars that I think got a nation on wheels, but not because necessarily it was the best car. It was because it was one of the only cars available. But people love those little Marlooks. Same sort of thing with a Trabant. You know, it was all you could really have if you were the normal person in East Germany at the time. The people who were more equal than equal got other choices such as Volvos and things like that. Interesting. Finley Printon says Mr. Mustard is Project Nigel. I think he's called Paul, the gentleman who runs the Project Nigel channel, as far as I understand it. Yes, I think he's based up in Yorkshire somewhere. Is Paul from Project Nigel? Ah, excellent. Simone got that right. Anyone else got anything to say about the cars on the Type 2 Fiat Alpha and other things, platform or anything else? A sip of this cider whilst I'm here. It's quite refreshing, that. Very nice. Those of you who are channel members, I have just recorded a very vlog today. And if you are on the Set Toledo tier and above, then you will be able to see it quite soon. The rest of you, that's going to go up at some point in June. So I have recorded another one today, and I will make it public quite soon because I think it's just finished uploading. But yes, that's one of the incentives to become a channel member. You don't have to, of course. It's entirely up to you, but that's what we give the channel members because they help us out. So tomorrow we're going to be having another episode of Sensible Secondhand Classics uploaded, goes public. And yes, I hope you will enjoy it. Some of your channel members have already seen it, but it's one of the best cars I think I've driven actually on that series. That will go out tomorrow morning. I hope you enjoy it. Simone says, I received my replacement axle for the Cortina, and I received some help to improve the engine running better, but sadly the water pump has failed. Oh dear, that's sad. Do you need to change the camber at the same time as the water pump in that engine? It's a Pinto, isn't it, in that Cortina? Richard Howlett says, I don't think I've ever driven a Fiat. That's interesting. Richard, you've been driving a while, haven't you? You've driven all kinds of things. That's interesting. Yes, Mr. Coleman's done many, 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 many Pinto engines in his time. It's all kinds of things that Mr. Coleman's an expert in, as I'm sure most of you know. Yes, Simone obviously as well says the pump is easy to get to on a Pinto engine. Yeah, that's what I understand. Finley Printon says, I've only ever had a Suzuki or a Citroen. Well, we've had many of those. In fact, there's a Suzuki coming from one of the cars we drove last month at the SMMT event at Millbrook. I did drive a Suzuki when I was there, although I can't remember when we're going to upload that. I think it's in a couple of weeks because of the schedule that I have, which has been dominated by been dominated for the last 4 weeks by such shambolic shuffles. I can't even remember how many episodes that I've actually done over the last month. I think it's something like 20. Could even be more than that, actually. Okay, so Simone says it's not easy to change the water pump on this one so much. It has an aftermarket alloy radiator, but needs to be removed to get the pump out first. Excellent. It's good. You've got a nice, good radiator in that one, Simone. Mr. Coleman is picking up on something we discussed actually earlier this week, Mr. Coleman, when we spoke. A Suzuki Swace. Do any of you actually know what a Suzuki Swace is? If so, just write it down in the chat box there. I'm not going to say anything for a moment. I'll just let those of you actually who might know what that is actually answer that question, because I obviously know what it is, but I'm not going to say. But you sort of yes, Philip Plimpton says yes. It is a Toyota Corolla Sport Touring Hybrid, rebadged and also made in Derbyshire with the Toyota people. It's what's called a compliance car. It's there to sort of lower the average CO2 figures for Suzuki, and obviously allow them to sell more cars in this country, because obviously it's built over here, so we don't have any problems with importing it or anything. The only problem is with the Swace is that, apart from the name, which is a bit unusual, the dealers only give you a 3-year warranty, and also I think it's more expensive trim for trim than the Toyota Corolla. So I suppose it depends on what deal you'd actually get as to whether or not you'd want to have one. But apart from that, it's a Corolla. Yes, you're quite right, Philip Plimpton. Bad Books, yes, you are right. Rebadged Corolla. Robert Evans says, yes, I own a Baleno, so no Suzukis. Yes, we like Balenos. I've never driven the old Baleno, I've driven the new one. That was on the channel, I don't even remember. I think it was early 2021 from memory. I'd have to actually look. Chabali asked Mr. Coleman, have you ever done a CV jaunt on a Mark II Cavalier? Mr. Coleman says, many times. Yes, Mr. Coleman has done work on an awful lot of cars. Chances are, if you name any car, Mr. Coleman would have either worked on it, serviced it, or crashed it in a banger race. That's generally what happens with virtually anything you care to mention, although not so much the modern ones, but the older ones. Mighty Catmod says, I've been enjoying all those shambolic shuffles. I haven't quite caught up yet, but I never cease to be impressed by your ability to recognise and avoid a forbidden fuel vehicle at 20 paces. I'm getting better, because identifying, certainly with an MG ZT or a Rev 75, you can tell what engine it has if you look through the driver's window and look at the rev counter. It's pretty easy. Although they don't always have the badge on the back. Sometimes they do, and you just swerve around them, but sometimes they don't. Simone says, I missed a few shambolic shuffles, go back and watch them. You don't have to, Simone. The rate that they've been going out at the moment's been frankly ridiculous. I'm afraid it probably won't abate after next weekend, because we're going to be at the retro rides weekender. And there's going to be an awful lot of shambolic shuffling there next weekend. 2 days. Mr. Bill and Lady Corporal Holmes from Fuel Power will be there as well. So Trabelli says let's do CV joints that I'm a Mark II Cavalier is quite common for doing. Mr. Coleman's not the biggest fan of the 2CV. The thing is about Mr. Coleman and I, and many of you are like this too, we love Ian Seabrook. I won't have a bad word said about Ian Seabrook. I think he's a wonderful, wonderful man in so many ways. He's very kind, he's very generous, and everything like that. And, he says a lot of really, really good things. But I don't necessarily agree with his taste in cars. That's all I say. There's many cars that he thinks are great, and I'm not entirely sure that they are. And some of the purchases he's made are not purchases I would personally make. I think that's just all I can really say about that. You don't have to kind of like the same things that someone else sort of does in order to respect them and actually like them. It's not really necessary, actually. Just means that actually life is more interesting. We like different things. Simone says, I have a car show part 2 walkabout tomorrow evening. Excellent. A non-shambolic non-shuffle is what I always call them. It's probably far less shambolic than anything I'm going to be making tomorrow, because we've got more shambolic shuffling tomorrow. Well, I should be going down to Bournemouth to do some of it. Yes, as Mr. Coleman and I discussed for the first time we met, which was the first ever Hub Nut social event in March 2019. He's known in Seabrook for years, far before the fact he ever had, a famous channel. Simone says a 2CV's upside down pram. Well, I don't know. That's sort of a way of putting it, isn't it? There's not much to go. There's not much about a 2CV really. I think that's why people like them. There's really not much about them at all. Philly Plimpton is talking to Mr. Coleman about Citroen GSA. Yes, another car that I don't think I'd sort of own one, but I mean it's pretty interesting. Mighty Cat Mod says, I don't think Ian Seabrook himself agrees with some of his purchases. The Fiat Multiplier was probably the worst purchase I've seen. The Toyota Camry wasn't great either. Trabally has given me a super chat donation. That's very kind of you, sir. Super chat is just a way to give to somebody on a in a one-off basis, without doing channel membership or anything like that, and obviously helps to run things. That will go towards my petrol tomorrow when I go to Bournemouth. Thank you, sir. Do I like beige exteriors? I think on certain cars, a beige can be really good. The best car I've seen for beige is probably the Triumph Acclaim. I think a Triumph Acclaim looks very, very good in beige, personally. Mr. Coleman's been cleaning his Cherokee ready for a show tomorrow. Yes, I'm looking forward to driving that Cherokee later in the month. Mr. Coleman's been very kind enough to be going it, so that's very nice. And then probably the first time some of you might see that in person is if you're going to... Oh gosh, this focus is terrible. There we go. That's better. Because we're going to Festival Exceptional, Mr. Coleman and I, and we're going to be taking that along. That's, I think, 30th of July, up in Lincolnshire, same location as last year. Simone asks, have I ever driven a Mark 1 Panda? I have not driven a Mark 1 Panda. I've sort of half been offered a chance to drive one, but I've not actually taken that up yet. Mighty Catmod says that a beige Maestro is nice. Like a City X, yeah. Not a Vanden Ploy. That doesn't look very good in beige. Apart from the interior, a Vanden Ploy Maestro with a beige leather interior is about as good as it gets in life, but not the exterior of Vanden Ploy. City X, yes, not the Vanden Ploy. Mr. Coleman says he's going to be setting off second, a low battery, and needs to get some E5 for the Jeep. Well, that's fine, sir. We shall no doubt be seeing more of your antics very soon, and I hope this camera focuses properly. Yes, I'm sorry the autofocus is so bad on this. I don't know why it's like this. Right, does anyone else have anything they need to say? We could sort of finish early actually tonight. If we don't need to keep going, that's not a problem. Because I think is it Eurovision tonight or something? Don't remember. F. Pheasant says BL must have bought a job lot of Harvest Gold and Sahara Beige. Yes, quite possibly. They were very popular for a time. Obviously, not anymore now. I think there is a gold Maestro Vanden Ploy, a later one that I've seen, which is gold with a beige leather interior. That's very, very nice. I like that. Right, I think we're just approaching half an hour mark now, so we might actually call that a day because there's not been so many people on tonight. Mr. Coleman's also saying, I apologise for lack of content on his channel. He's doing a degree at the moment. Yes, he's doing a degree at the moment as well as work, and he's taking up a lot of his free time. That is absolutely correct. Trouble says, totally agree with MC, we're very knowledgeable, questionable cars. I don't think he'll minds that people kind of say that his taste in cars is questionable. I have questionable taste myself in some areas, and that's okay. For instance, says, how about a Diane or a 2CV as a test? I really want to do a Diane. I don't know if I'm a 2CV kind of person, but a Diane, I would quite happily drive one of those, particularly because there was a character called Paul Boucher in The Protectors who actually drove a Diane. Rob Paulson, I had an MG Maestro in off-white. I think it's called English Ivory, suited it. I am trying to get hold of an MG Maestro for review. I have done a walk around of one. It was a very successful one on the channel. It was a dark green one, but it actually appeared on Flipping Bangers, that particular car, back in some garage a year ago. I did a walk around. An unexpected success, that video. But I filmed it about 10 minutes in the rain. I couldn't drive it. So, yes, we do like this sort of things. But I think that's it. So I think we'll call it a night then. So thank you ever so much indeed for watching this slightly less than professional live stream number 29. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment below if you haven't already done so. Thank you again to Trabberley for the Super Chat donation. Yes, I will be at the Furious Driving social event up at the Motorist near Leeds on the 28th. Mr. Richardson and I are put into the same hotel, which is going to be interesting. And yes, tomorrow morning will be the next episode of Sensible Secondhand Classics. And then hopefully in the afternoon or the evening, then you'll see another Shambolic Shuffle, because I know loads of you really like those. So thanks ever so much indeed, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed tonight, and see you again, probably one of these in a couple of weeks. Maybe the 29th will be the next one.